We need to talk about Catra. Knock knock.
Who's there?
Catra.
Catra who?
Catra's fucking awesome!
So, Catra's great.
Catra is everything you want in a villain. She's conniving, she's manipulative, she's vicious, she's an actual emotional threat, she's an ideological threat, she's a physical threat.
Yeah, okay, honestly, I think she's a phenomenal villain, and I think she needs to be seen as a villain, because, while she may not have started off the series as a complete and total villain, she was more of an anti-hero or an antagonist.
Mm-hmm.
She's definitely, after the events of Season 3, gone full-on villain mode. And I think that's fantastic, and I think that needs to be accepted more, because there's nothing wrong with being a bad guy. Not a bad character, a bad guy.
Bad cat.
That's what she is.
She's a bad cat.
Yeah.
Bad kitty.
But we want to clarify that we have no distaste for her character.
Absolutely not. In fact, she's one of the best things about the show by far and away.
Yeah.
One of the things that separates She-Ra and the Princesses of Power from basically every other children's animated series at the time is the quality of the writing, the quality of the delivery of the dialogue, and the animation. Let alone the representation, the rich mythology, the genius rebooting of a frankly ridiculous 80s property. Like, come on guys, like I know a bunch of people were upset about the redesigns, but what's the most in-depth storyline He-Man had? And now the comic is just going to be filled with just classic He-Man people just crucifying us, alright? We're cucks, we're shills, we're libtards, just...
Moving on!
Moving on! I'd even go so far as to say that Catra extends beyond being simply Adora's antagonist. Noelle Stevens has even said in a thing that she's been writing Catra as a secondary protagonist for the series, which makes sense. She has her own supporting cast, she has her own politics that she has to maneuver within her faction. She goes beyond just being a run-of-the-mill episodic bad guy. She has her own agenda and maneuvers to try and meet it. And it's even fascinating to the point that Adora is kind of an antagonist to her story as well, in that they both have to react and plan around the other's victories and failures. Yeah. She's a brilliantly written villain in every sense of the word, right up there with some of the greats with Mark Hamill's Joker and Azula from Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah, and I would say you can see that her arc very clearly, I mean, it's not only like her own character arc, but it's interesting because her arc very clearly mirrors Adora's arc. So
absolutely.
That just goes playing into the secondary protagonist that you were talking about.
Absolutely,
right?
But it also plays into the theme of just reflections and mirror images that's kind of all over the place with this show, you know? In ways of how people have multiple forms, you know, She-Ra and Adora, Shadow Weaver and Light Spinner, but also going into how multiple characters reflect the roles that they play in the other storyline. And what I mean by that is if you take a look at the role of Glimmer and the role of Scorpia, the roles that they play within respective protagonists, Adora and Catra's lives, they are very much narratively fulfilling the same roles. They are protective, supportive, you know, they generally let the other take the lead in terms of planning or leading missions. They're both of the same rank, so on and so forth. Even Entrapta and Hordak are kind of mirrors of each other in terms of the fact that Entrapta is kind of not really related to for the rest of the princesses. She's kind of seen as separate in the same way that Hordak is seen as a lesser clone of Horde Prime, and yet they are both in love with science. They are these brilliant minds, but Entrapta has the motive of science for science's sake, where Hordak has dedicated everything to just becoming whole and proving that he is worthwhile. Which is another thing. Everybody wants to prove that they're good enough. Like, everyone, except Swiftwind, and that's why he's best horse. So yeah, there are a billion and one things to like about Catra, to love about Catra, but to really go into what makes her such a nuanced and layered and three-dimensional character that everybody loves for one reason or another, it would be irresponsible of us not to throw up a content warning here, because we're going to go really heavily into themes of abuse, both abuse in romantic relationships, abuse of family systems, in friendships. So if that is a topic that is sensitive to you, there's the time code, and we'll be giving our thesis statement there, so you can go ahead and skip to that, or bow out of this video. No judgment on our part. You do what you do to stay safe, okay? So, 3, 2, 1. Catra's an abuser!
We said it.
Yeah, there it is. It's out in the open now.
Let's talk about how she got there, because she did. Because we talked about her arc and how important it is and how it mirrors Adora's, and it's really important when you talk about what happened to her and how she was abused and how she eventually fell into her cycle of abuse and became an abuser herself.
Yes, because Adora and Catra were both manipulated and lied to and gaslit and belittled in a bunch of different ways.
That's canon.
And it is. And they are forced to become child soldiers for this space fascist regime, you know? They're basically the Empire. And in doing this, Catra and Adora have had a relationship that goes somewhat even beyond friendship, that has been around since they were both very small. Adora was a baby and Catra was a kitten, and they were together, but then now they're not. And the key thing here is to notice that Adora was able to fall into an environment where she was finally able to free herself from the abuse of her mother figure. Catra declined that offer and chose to stay to follow her own ambitions and her pursuit to power.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Absolutely.
Because I think that's important, and I've seen a lot of defense in Catra's case against Adora, and that is the idea that Catra did not make her own choice to stay because she did. That was evident in episode 1.
Episode 2.
You're right, it's a two-parter. Oh,
Yeah.
it's evident in episode 2.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Technically it's episode 1, part 2, but
Yes.
it's episode 2.
Episode 2, wherein Adora offers, not for the last time, for Catra to come with her and be free of the abuse cycle, and Catra declines. And we can go into why.
Yeah. But before that, there is a really beautiful parallel in the Marvel movies, and if you watch this show, you've probably seen the MCU films.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, they're similar in the thing. Probably everyone's seen Marvel at this point.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about Nebula and Gamora. All right.
More.
So, Nebula and Gamora. Let's take a look at this. We got Blue Ninja and Green Ninja, and they're raised by Giant Purple Incel.
Ooh.
Giant Purple Incel. And what winds up happening is he abuses the both of them and tries to turn them into the ultimate warriors, the ultimate soldiers, to try and do a thing. And Gamora takes the first chance she gets, and she skedaddles. And Nebula sticks around and tries to please Thanos even more until she fails royally. And then she's like, all right, I'm just going to dedicate the rest of my life to killing Thanos. Because there's a moment in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 where Nebula and Gamora are exhausted and they've been trying to kill each other like all day. And Nebula says this wonderful line, which beautifully mirrors Catra and Adora, which is,
I win. I bested you in combat.
No, I saved your life.
Well, you were stupid enough to let me live.
You let me live.
I don't need you always trying to beat me.
I'm not the one that just flew across the universe just because I wanted to win.
Do not tell me what I want.
I don't need to tell you what you want. It's obvious.
You were the one who wanted to win, and I just wanted a sister.
that's them! You know, and Adora was Shadow Weaver's favorite because Shadow Weaver was like, oh hey, first one, baby. And oh hey, I can manipulate this into becoming super baby. Yeah. Point is, yeah, there was a sense of favoritism going on, but Catra was basically consistently riding on the coattails of Adora's success throughout all of this to try and get Shadow Weaver's attention and favor, specifically in trying to outshine Adora's victory. And we see this very clearly in the training exercise in the opening minutes of Season 1, Episode 1, where Catra doesn't show up, isn't in uniform, doesn't play along with anybody else, and only shows up when she sees an opportunity to win, and then wins, and then saves Adora, and then at the end of it, completely bucking all of this protocol, complains that she's been working just as hard as Adora. Have you? Because that's really there's nothing in the text or visual information that we are given throughout the entire series to support that at all.
Right.
Catra consistently is trying to work behind the scenes. She avoids a fair fight in every possible opportunity. She's always trying to get the upper hand. She's always dancing around the battlefield, hiding and striking from the shadows. And that is also in line with how she tries to gain political power. Which brings us to Catra's motive.
So, I mean, there's a lot that can be read in the subtext of this series. We're not going to deny that.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot that can be read in subtext in any work of fiction. But you can't also ignore the text and what is directly in front of you, or what is directly on screen, or what is being said by the characters. And you made a really great point when we were talking about this off camera, and that was that a lot of our early, like the media we grew up with, people our age, early 20s, late 20s, teens, whatever.
The tail end of the millennial
generation, yeah.
Yeah.
We were kind of raised with that poisonous 90s sitcom idealization of relationships where it's like, oh, if I push you at the playground, I really like you. Oh, if I call you names, it's because I want to fuck you. You know what I mean? It's that
It's that Meg Ryan 90s rom-com.
Yeah.
And, you know, oh, we're spitting venom at each other. Obviously, this means that there's unresolved sexual tension.
Right. And it's tough in this scenario with these characters because it's very clear they do have a connection. You know, in episode 1, you see Catra lying on Adora's bed, sleeping in her bunk, not her own bunk. Maybe she doesn't have a bunk. I don't know. Maybe she chooses to sleep with Adora. We don't know. But there's a lot you can read from that situation and that subtext and everything like that. And I'm not denying any of it. But what I am saying is that what we're saying is that you need to also look at the context of what is being said, what is being done. And I think a lot of people point to the Promise episode as their kind of defense for Catra and Adora and their relationship. But there's also a lot that happens in that episode that points to the idea that Catra does not want Adora back.
You know,
She has a line.
Yeah, a lot of people point to the whole, you know, giving the sword and all that stuff, and this isn't because I like you and stuff like that. But the thing is, actually in the Promise, you know, she says this.
The sad thing is, I've spent all this time hoping you'd come back to the Horde, when really you leaving was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a point where it stops being subtext and it starts, you interpret it because you want this outcome, and that's just bad critical thought. You're starting with the outcome and working backwards to try and find that.
Sure, that's a good point. Because here's what here's what we're thinking about season 3. It's getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. But we don't know where the series is going to end up.
Absolutely
We
not.
don't know where characters will end up.
Nope.
But right now, the defenses we're currently seeing for Catra do not accurately represent where she is as a character. And they're avoiding the truth.
Because if we really look at this, if we really take a look at the relationship between Catra and Adora, it's not just a tragic story of best friends who have been slowly pulled apart by war and circumstance and choice and ideology. What it really boils down to at the end of the day is someone got out of an abusive family, someone didn't, and the person who didn't is doing everything in their power to hurt the other person now. Even to the point of when Catra is finally free of Shadow Weaver's influence. She's in prison, Shadow Weaver isn't actively manipulating her anymore, and even when Shadow Weaver escapes prison and we have all of that activity in the Crimson Waste, Catra finally gets everything she ever wanted. She gets power and respect and an army and a loyal friend, and all of this is finally there. She even defeats Adora and renders her powerless. And all of that is meaningless as soon as she found out that when Shadow Weaver left prison, it was to meet up with Adora. And that's a genuine trigger. Honestly, like, props to whoever wrote that episode. I don't know if it was Noelle, but props for them for actually showing a legitimate psychological trigger of someone who was abused.
Yeah.
And then from that trigger, how do I put this delicately? Catra broke the world.
You were right. That is not good.
She just broke it. What Adora and Entrapta told her was that pulling the lever would break the universe. It would undo time and space and ruin everything. And Catra would literally burn reality to the ground rather than give Adora something that she wants.
I don't care. I won't let you win. I'd rather see the whole world end than let that happen.
That's not love. That's not love. In no definition of love is it, oh hey, do you want something? Well, fine. To prevent you from getting it, I'm gonna break the universe.
I mean, yeah, it's a perfect world for her, perfect world, but it wasn't why she pulled the lever. She was intending to undo reality, and she was intending to do it because Adora asked her not to.
And then, tried to gaslight her into telling her that, hey, breaking reality was your fault. Oh, you made me do this. Look what you made me do, Adora. I have many emotions about this.
And I mean, you could make the argument that a lot of Catra's actions, a lot of her decisions, a lot of her choices are all made because of her past and her abuse and the things that have happened to her. And I'm not going to argue that you're wrong, because you're right. That is a lot of the reasons why she does what she does. But as we'll go into a little deeper a little bit later, I think, mental illness is really not an excuse for actions. It's maybe an explanation, not an excuse. Ever an excuse.
Nope. And we both live with mental illnesses.
So, yeah.
Every day. And so we're kind of speaking from experience on that one. The heart.
And heart.
Heart.
But I do kind of want to go into the idea of that abuse and that being an excuse for her actions. Or maybe not so much an excuse, but people are trying to explain.
Justify.
Why. Justify is a good word. Justify why she's doing these things. And I know that plays a lot into why people want her to have redemption, or
Yes.
a redemption arc.
Yes.
And I can agree with that. However, I don't think it's fair to say it would be unfair for the showrunners to not give her a redemption arc, because you already have a story of rising from abuse in Adora, in your protagonist. And it doesn't really matter that they went through two different kinds of abuse, because no one has a monopoly on abuse or mental illness or suffering. They just don't.
No one gets to say my trauma was worse than yours, because everybody deals with trauma differently. Some people go through trauma by being in a war zone. Some people go through trauma just by holding a gun and firing it. PTSD affects us all in very different ways. Abuse affects us all in very different ways. And being abused does not give you license to be cruel. And that's one thing I really want to point out about Catra, is that it's not just pettiness, it's not just meanness or bullying, it's cruelty. It's not enough for Catra to win. She has to hurt Adora, she has to continuously hurt Adora, and she needs Adora to know that she was the one who hurt her from the ground up every time. And that's as evident going as far back as the Battle of Bright Moon, where she literally says, this isn't over until all of Etheria is covered in darkness, and I get to see the look on your friend's face when they know that you failed them. That's not love.
Yeah. I mean, I want to say it again just because I don't want to attack anyone.
No.
I understand the catalyst for the ship. I do. I really do. I get it. But where it stands now is not healthy. It's extremely toxic, and it's upsetting that people
Justify
it or erase it. So I because it's important. I think it's just as important to see that represented on screen as it is to see a healthy relationship. Because that stuff exists. That type of relationship exists.
And it's important.
It sucks.
It's important to show that not everything ends well, and also that's okay. And it's okay to cut abusive people, even family members who have abused you, out of your life. And especially considering this wasn't like, a slow burn or a sudden betrayal on the part of Adora, and she has consistently gone out of her way to try and offer Catra a way out of the fright zone, a way out of the horde back to, the hippie compound. But Catra doesn't take it, because now it's not enough to be with Adora. It's not enough to win. Adora has to hurt. She has to be beaten. Catra has to feel superior in the victory. Not just be, but feel superior.
So you hit on something that I think is really important that this show does really well and did really well in the last episode of season 3, which was Adora taking her power back from a toxic relationship. And I think a lot of people like that moment. I don't think I've seen anyone that was like, that shouldn't have happened. I think everyone thought that was really empowering and great character development. And it should be allowed to let go of toxic people in your life. Anybody who's toxic in your life. Like you said, family, friends, relationship, you know, boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever. You should be able to let go of people that hurt you and make your life worse and make it toxic. And I think it was fantastic to see that. And I think it needs to be allowed to stay that way, because Catra is not a good person right now. As she stands now, she's a horribly toxic person. And it needs to be okay that our protagonist lets that go.
Absolutely. That being said, if Noelle Stephens and her team have proved anything time and time again, it's that they are able to take ridiculous concepts and make not just high drama, but compelling drama out of them.
True.
They are fantastic at what they do. I'm of the firm opinion that She-Ra and the Princesses of Power is the best animated series to air on any platform since Last Airbender, as far as I'm concerned. They do tremendous work, and I genuinely believe that if they have a plan for a redemption arc for Catra, I think they could pull it off. But as it stands right now, I think we need to ask the question.
So let's talk about that.
Everybody loves redeemed characters because we want to believe that redemption is possible within all of us. And some of the most enduring stories of all time are about the nature of redemption. Whether that's in a character as old as King Lear, or Ebenezer Scrooge, or Darth Vader. You know, like a lot of our favorite, Jean Valjean, a lot of our favorite and enduring and recognizable characters end their character arc, or begin their character arc, from a place of trying to recover from a fall from grace. Catra had no grace to fall from. Catra openly acknowledges the fact that she is being manipulated, she is being abused, and she's okay with it because eventually she'll be able to get back at them and be better than them and rule. She says that in episode 2, technically part 2 of episode 1, but here.
Duh! Did you just figure that out? Manipulation is Shadow Weaver's whole thing. She's been messing with our heads since we were kids.
How could you possibly be okay with that?
Because it doesn't matter what they do. The two of us look out for each other. And soon we'll be the ones calling the shots.
Right there. So, yeah, she has no grace to fall from. She has always been from a place of bad. Does that mean she can't turn good? Not necessarily. I think it'll take a heck of a writing strength to make this character, this heel-to-face turn, believable. But is it a bad thing if Catra's not redeemed? No. Because some of the best characters in recent years, in the last 20 years, don't get redemption arcs. They're just tragedies. And you look at them and they are compelling and engaging. Characters like Walter White, or Azula, or Cersei Lannister. These are characters who are engaging, and not many people would say they actively relate to, but we love to root for them and are intrigued by them and their charisma and their power, even though they do awful, awful, awful things. And honestly, to see that played all the way through in a kids show, to me, I think would be absolutely fascinating. Yeah, because to actually see a kid's villain go, oh, you mean there's an even higher evil throne I can climb? Yeah, let's sit on that. What an amazing villain. What a fascinating character.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of amazing characters even that endure to this day, not even recent ones, are tragedies. Characters like Othello and Macbeth and Richard III. These despicable people who just fall and crash and burn. Not everyone gets to be from Saul to Paul. Some people are just Icarus.
But we should also talk about the idea of her redemption and what could happen. Because I think we saw some interesting videos that I will link. I can find them again.
I'll send them to you.
Okay, thank you. So there were some interesting videos we saw about the ideas of redemption and redemption arcs and how they're not always so cut and dry. There's a lot of redemption arcs that maybe don't turn out in the classic, hey, we're a good guy now. You know what I mean? Like
Vader.
Vader is a great example. I mean, you have a redemption that ends in death. In the end, he acknowledges his sins and his crimes, but he's not truly redeemed.
Vader has fallen into an abusive relationship with his mentor, in this case, Emperor Palpatine. And what is the redemption is Vader is able to choose against the interest of the Empire and in the interest of his son, which ties into Anakin's personality, because the driving force of Anakin for all time has been, I don't want to lose my family, whether that's been his mother or Padme and now Luke. And, you know, I personally still cry every time I hear Vader say,
Tell your sister you were right.
because there was a chance that he could be turned to the good. Not a chance that he could make up for the millions, literal millions of people he is either directly or indirectly responsible for, a lot of them children, but that he could turn. And then, you know, a lot of people bring up Zuko, and how could you not? Where Zuko is confronted with a choice, Catra makes the wrong choice. Because with Zuko, the whole point of his character arc is he wants to do the right thing, and for him the right thing is restore his honor, and to do that he has to capture the Avatar. But it's also to earn his father's love. And doing the right thing for him means broadening the scope of his compassion, starting with his crew of the ship in the storm, to meeting villagers in the Earth Kingdom, to living as a refugee, to finally being able to live a middle-class life in Ba Sing Se. And then the wrong choice he makes is to go back to who he was before, to try and reclaim the honor that he thought he lost, which in reality he hadn't.
Well, I think the thing with Zuko that separates them most of all is the idea that, for me, and my interpretation of Zuko, was that Zuko's actions always felt like they were misguided as opposed to being deliberate choices to hurt someone. And in that case, I think Catra relates a lot more to Azula than she does Zuko, or at least in her arc, and like I said, in her choices and what she makes. But Zuko always felt like a character who was just unsure and not knowing which was the right direction to pick, and just trying to achieve that one goal that he had set out to, very single-mindedly. But I think it made him a lot less evil than it did his sister.
And it's important to note, a lot of people relate Catra's most recent choices at the end of Season 3 with pulling the lever Kronk and, you know, hitting Scorpia and tasing Entrapta and sending her off to a monster colony to die. And then lying to Hordak about the only positive relationship that was ever in his life. You know, that's a lot different than Aang and Katara being betrayed by Zuko in a lot of ways. Because for this to kind of be an equivalent, it wouldn't have been, first of all, Zuko would have had to have been the one to hit Aang and to, like, bring him down in the Avatar state. And second of all, he also would have had to, like, directly assaulted Iroh. Like, in terms of betraying the only positive role model he has ever had in his life. The only legitimate support system. And can we talk about Best Girl for a second? Because I didn't talk about Scorpia's Best Girl.
Talking about Scorpia, it makes me so upset.
No one is talking about Scorpia.
Guys, okay, we understand that there's a lot of drama. We understand there's a lot of drama between Catra and Adora right now. We get it. They're the main duo. But Scorpia, you guys, she has never been anything but loyal and kind and supportive and so utterly just... I can't. She's been so good to Catra, and Catra has done nothing in return.
And, like, okay, you guys want to talk about love? That's love. Like, this is
That
someone...
is, like, unconditional love.
She goes out of her way in every capacity either to help Catra achieve her goals, encourage her, support her, execute her vision of the future, assist her in her plans, and even supplement the information that Catra missed at Force Captain orientation. And Catra, the only time I can remember of Catra really acknowledging and valuing that is when she looks up at Scorpia while Scorpia's running out, and when she's just like, hey, don't just toast me, also toast Scorpia. That's it. Those are the only times that Catra has ever been outwardly affectionate to Scorpia. And what does she do? Threaten to knock her unconscious and then send her to Monster Island to die. It's called Beast Island, whatever. To send her to Godzilla Island to die.
Yeah.
Catra's a monster. She's a monster. And that's why she's awesome. So, to come to our thesis statement, basically what we're saying is love Catra. Love her fiercely and without abandon, and respect the craftsmanship from everybody involved, from the animators to the writers to the actress that brought this beautiful character to life. But don't romanticize abuse, and don't fault someone for rising above it. And PTSD and coming from a trauma background should only ever serve as context, never as a justification. Thank you so much for watching. If you actually made it all the way through to this, we got a little off the rail, but honestly, like, thank you so much for even like sticking through us with this ride. Hopefully, all we wanted to do, we don't want to anger anyone, we don't want to upset anyone, we're not trying to tell you who to like or what to like or why to like it. We just thought this was kind of problematic and need to be brought up, and you have any counterpoints, respectfully, you know, let us know. Like, leave a comment down below. Here's a Tumblr where you can reach us at. We definitely made some people angry, and that wasn't what we tried to do. We're sorry, but
just some things we wanted to say.
Hard pills to swallow.
Hard pills to swallow.
Hard pills to
For
swallow.
Sure, for sure.
All-
Can we end with one more thing?
Yes.
What would you like to see, if you would like to see this, because I have a thing I'd like to see.
Yep.
If Catra gets a redemption arc, how would you like to see her redeemed? And I can go first.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Cool. So, if Catra were to be redeemed, she would need to obviously take responsibility.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.
Take responsibility for her actions, acknowledge her actions, prove to the others that she wants to be better. A big sorry is necessary. But here's the thing, here's the crux. I do not want to see the others accept that apology. I would like to see Catra make her apology, understand her actions, make the change in herself, and walk away. Walk away from everyone. Find her own life, her own world, her own friends. Just become her own person. She doesn't need everyone else who's been in her past, who's led her up to this point. Just walk away.
Kind of building off of that, I kind of want something similar, but I don't even want that conversation to happen.
No.
I think for me, for Catra to rise above her own abuse, I think too much has gone sour between her and Adora for things to ever be okay again. And I would want Catra to have the maturity to recognize that that's the case. So what I want her to go back out to the Crimson Wastes, and I want her to become a third faction that we have to deal with now. So we've got Team Bright Moon with Queen Glimmer, rest in peace Angela, got to and, you know, Bo and the other Princess Alliance and all that good stuff. You've got Hordak and the Horde, and then you have Scorpia, Catra, and the Crimson Wastes bandits, and they're able to strike out from the desert and disrupt supply lines or steal things, and, you know, just kind of be a third party and kind of have these shifting alliances that we have to see and kind of up the scales in the gravitas. I think that would be really cool to see.
But we'll see.
We'll
We
see.
trust the team, and we're not telling them how to tell their story. Whatever happens, happens, and hopefully happens
Well,
believably.
Yeah, well, honestly, at the end of the day, we're just here for good storytelling, whatever that looks like. So, thank you so much for sticking around, and hopefully we will see you next time we make one of these rambly, ranty videos. Until then, I've been Chris.
I've been Megan.
And have a good day.